Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley and welcome to episode 28 of the Wheatley podcast. As always, thank you very much for your support and for listening to last week's episode. Thank you to Elaine for coming over to talk about yoga and meditation. It was a really interesting podcast. I'm going to check out meditation over there. She's in Westside Yoga. It's if you're in Athlone, it's over on Connacht Street. I'm hoping I'm right with that, I think. But yeah, contact Elaine if you want to go to one of her classes and see what it's all about. We're doing the Facebook Live thing now. It's on Sundays instead of Saturdays. If you want to hear me butcher a couple of songs and, you know, talk out my mouth, I nearly said something else there. But I know my parents are listening, so I wouldn't curse. So I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, a man who I have mentioned on this podcast a number of times. He's been one of those, he's like a ghost in the machine or something like. So he keeps kind of popping up, and he was, like I said to Sean when he was over here a few weeks ago, that he was one of the first names on the list, and we finally got together. So he's my friend, and his name is Shane Rafferty. How are you, Shane?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for coming over. Long drive in a really horrible weather.
Yeah, it's been a bad July.
It's
and into August.
Yeah, it's not a summer. We haven't had one, but thanks a million. First of all, we'd start with the short history of your upbringing.
Yeah, well, I was born in Galway. Well, Ballinasloe, County Galway. I spent a few years in Athlone, but then we moved to England. Moved over to Brighton. I spent a couple of years there.
Yeah.
But my father's job, he travelled quite a bit. So I got quite lucky to spend a couple of years in Brighton, and then maybe a year and a half in Paris.
Wow.
After that, don't remember too much of Brighton. Remember quite a bit of Paris, actually, funnily enough. Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, see,
I learned all my French from Only Fools at Home.
Bonjour. But after that, came back. Kind of went to an Irish school. Went to the Scullingare Monastery.
Okay.
I don't really remember why. I never really had a conversation with my parents why that was, why they sent me there. But pretty glad of it now. Developed a bit of a, affinity for languages, I suppose, after that. Enjoyed it, I suppose. Loads of sports. Grew up, played sports. Lots of club football, lots of computer games growing up. Then as soon as I hit 13, 14, found music, and all that went. That was it. It went. It was gone.
We're gonna dig into music because obviously, I actually met you very early on through music. Actually, a band that you were in, and I knew Sean, and Sean knew you, and it was kind of an introduction through that way. And I got to play a very nice guitar that you owned. So
okay.
I remember that.
Actually, we'll talk about that. Actually, you mentioned that before, but I don't. We'll probably go over that a bit more.
We'll dig deep into that.
Yeah, I probably wasn't kind of the most sober at the time, I suppose. But look,
bit of a side.
Has itself out.
So when did you first become aware of mental health?
It would have been when I was about 10 or 11. There was a very close family member of mine took their own life.
Okay. And
at the time, I didn't really, I suppose thinking about it now, you can kind of try and dissect how you thought and the thought process and what was happening around you. But that at the time, I just didn't know what it was. Just someone was there and they weren't.
Yeah.
We all understand how the mental health system and whatever, but now, imagine like 20 odd years ago was just non-existent. So someone was there and then someone wasn't. When they're that close to you, it's my father, my parents trying to, I suppose, maneuver me through those couple of months, and then these subsequent years after that was quite difficult for them. Now my father, he used to be quite adamant. Like at my grandfather's funeral, he was like, nope, no church only. There's no going to see any kind of nothing too intimate. He just didn't want me around that type of stuff. And the same thing applied here. But as I got older, I kind of started to. My dad kind of sat me down and kind of spoke to me about stuff, and the mental health thing came up. Now I don't even know if he mentioned it as mental health at the time. It was I don't know. It was just all around conversation about how you feel and how you're getting on.
Yeah.
That types of stuff. Like I suppose as I think through my teenage years, there's I'm trying to focus, anxiety. I never really thought anxiety was a thing, I suppose. Or not that I never thought it was a thing. I never really kind of understood it.
Yeah.
I used to just get nervous, before football matches as a kid or before gigs as I got older. you know. And I suppose it's fundamentally it is what it is. You're kind of worried, right? Okay, if I break string in the first song, or if I, you know, whatever, if I put the boots on the wrong feet or something before a match, or you know, something ridiculous like that, or accidentally punch the ref or whatever. But that types of stuff. But then as you get older, you get more education around. You kind of go, oh yeah, maybe, and then you start to manage it a bit better and just expect it, and you know, you're way more comfortable with it then. But the journey from start to finish, you know, it began there when I was about 11.
I think it's funny actually to mention anxiety, because in the last 2 episodes as well, I talked with the 2 people I had on about how you classify it when you're a kid, like, you know, when you say 11, right? We'll say 11 right through to 16 or something, where you don't know what's anxiety, like you don't have any reference point to what anxiety is. So it might feel like nerves, like before a match, but it shouldn't carry on into the next day or the day after.
It never did.
Yeah,
it
didn't for you, yeah. But I'd like to think that now we, like parents, would have a bit more of education on how mental health works, and be able to help kids. If kids went to their parents at the age of 12 and said, I'm always feeling nervous about something, you know, that we'd have something to kind of grasp onto, rather than, there wasn't anything then, like, you know, and we weren't able to vocalize it either. You know, as kids, that's it's too hard.
I'm sure if you don't know what you're talking about, how you're supposed to do it.
You don't. And like, do you think then your dad, through that, what happened to your you know, your relation, do you think your dad kind of saw it as something he needed to check in with you on?
Well, the proof is in what he did. You know, his actions, you know, they spoke loud enough to me. You know, as I get older, I kind of always appreciated that. And at that point, you know, I went through something that, you know, unfortunately a lot of people in the last 10 years have gone through, I suppose, with their family members. And now there's way more help available. But back then, he just did what he thought was natural to do, which was just to protect me. Whether, you know, it was all, and you know, growing up, it was always physically. You know, it was always, I don't know if it was when years ago, it would always been maybe bullying, or, you know, just safety, and, you know, in town on the streets or whatever, just physical, just protection from physical violence. But it was probably something new to my dad, but because, you know, he's quite a grounded, kind of calm person, he probably went, okay, look, I think there's another kind of plateau here. I need to make sure, because I mean, talk about, you know, an awakening. You know, for him, I suppose, as a father, I would just, like any person who's a father, I suppose that would be quite a, you know, a startling moment, just to witness that, or hear from the parent of the child, or whatever the case may be. It would kind of divert your track and make you do something else, or that, you know, must push you into gear at some point. To come naturally to look inward and look into what, you know, your own home, and see what you could work out. And as frightening as it was, you know, he did it. But in saying that, I mean, he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, in the sense that, you know, he just did what was natural. He's like, I don't know where to go from here. Like, I have to, you know, etc. I have to go to work tomorrow. Is my son going to be okay? My daughter going to be okay, etc. You know, why did that happen? And the question he's asking is, how do I prevent it? You know, and no education around it at all. You know, like he didn't have, like, what were the chats that we would have, or that we could have, you know, whoever we have, our best friends, etc. about a lot of this stuff. You know, so he just kind of had to wing it himself.
That's great, though. It's great that he did, you know, that he was at the inside to do,
you know,
it.
and of course my mother, in fairness, you know, she was obviously this, you know, the steel and the foundation behind him as well. You know, so she kind of, and in fairness to her, she learned from him too. You know, so she would kind of, when he went to work, she'd kind of carry on. And this was something they did over years, you know, which was, you know, regardless, you know, every upbringing is, you know, the house is going to be tumultuous, whatever. But there was always that there. Talk, tell us, you know, and you know, it sounds quite, but again, we come from a time where this wasn't a thing. So nowadays, just talk about it. Might sound a bit, you know, reductive or whatever, but back then it meant a lot.
It did.
When nobody said it. Ironically. Do you know what I mean? It's
funny. So, like, just to give a bit of background, when I met Shane, so obviously I met Shane when he was in a band, and I was in the pub ready to see the band, and I got up and I met him, and I played his lovely Les Paul guitar at the time. It was a Les Paul, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Beautiful guitar. And so I kind of didn't see him then for a while, and so I talked about this before, so I skimmed through it, but I had the breakdown, and I was finding it very difficult to go places. And through cognitive behavioral therapy, he started to give me little things to do, just go to the shop and go here. So I found Eason's and Extravision to be the two places that I could go, right, where there was like a bit of comfort. There's lots of things for me to look at, I suppose. That was the first thing. So then I got to know yourself, and I got to know Joe, and I got to know Philip, and I felt very safe down there, you know. And there was always that thing of buying films, which I love doing anyway, but going in just having a chat with you, and always about different things, because you all kind of had your specialist subjects, you know. As we all do, you know. And so and then we started to go for lunch and meet up. And I suppose this is kind of going on from what you say about your dad and your mum. You're a very empathetic person, what I found anyway, because I could just chat to you. We'd sit in one of the restaurants or whatever. I was going to drop a name there, but they have enough. They have enough money. But
you do that.
Poppy Fields, I'll drop that because fair play to them. But you know, I found a very an empathetic character, because you were very in touch with. If I was talking to you about, you know, if I was having a bad day, a bad week, I was on a low, I was very anxious, whatever it was, I could always find some kind of ease with how you rationalized in your head. Do you know what I mean? So I know I'm putting this kind of on you now, but it's one of those things where you don't find it in everyone. You do find it in a certain amount of people. Obviously, my mum would be one of those people, and I do think it's a huge trait that if we could all have it, I think it'd be something special. And like you say, you didn't have your full-on anxiety or full-on, you know, depression and stuff. You know, we all have stuff that's gone in our lives and stuff, but I wouldn't say like a mental health concern. But somehow you were able to vocalize what I should be seeing rather than what I was seeing, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah.
You know.
No. First of all, thanks.
No, it's okay.
But you know, the empathy thing is it's hard to explain.
It is. Of course,
it's like talking about your values.
Yeah.
You know, when you start a job or you start in college or whatever, people are like, "Oh, what value? You know, what values do you have?" And you're going, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
You know, they're just natural to you and they're tough to kind of vocalize. But empathy, I found some. Yeah, I suppose I just found it quite comfortable. I don't really. It just doesn't really bother me. I suppose when people are kind of, and in fact I enjoy it. I suppose if that's the correct way to say it. I always kind of, the way I rationalize it in my head is, regardless of how someone feels or how someone behaves, the exact opposite must exist.
Yeah,
must exist. Do you know? So for example, if someone is in a bad place, then you know it has to be, you know, within reason that they can reach another place.
Yeah,
you know, it's there. You know, it's just about helping them get there, I suppose. And now this is obviously coming from uneducated words or an uneducated mind in terms of, you know, mental health or whatever, or someone has kind of never really been through it. But I don't. It's like, say, if you're confronted with someone who's aggressive, say. You know, it's like, you know, it's fine, because I understand that if I speak to the nicest people in the world, that I must eventually encounter someone on this side of it. You know, so it's just balance.
Yeah.
You know, I just accept it as for what it is, and I don't let it bother me, or, you know, the words that are coming out are mostly hollow. You know, they're just empty, whatever the case may be, and they're just venting, or they might be suffering from something. I'm sympathetic and empathetic in the way that I don't know what this person's going through. You know, what they've been through, what could cause whatever, if it's a mental illness, if it may be a breakdown, or if it's an upsetting scenario, or if someone is angry or becoming physically aggressive. You know, I just don't meet it. I don't mirror it. You know, I kind of just, I don't mirror their, I suppose for want of a better term, I don't mirror what their actions. I kind of hold the mirror up to them, saying, look, well, this is the way you're behaving, and I'm not willing to match it. You know?
But it's also like actions into words, because like, and I'll include Shirley in this, your partner, obviously, as well, because you had gone to moved out to a new place, and you invited me a number of times, and I was just freaked out. You know, when I'm knocked out of my routine, I'm a little, you know, anyway. People, I'd be freaked out, people be knocked out of my routine, and you know, obviously, if I went out to Shane's, I don't drive, so I was going to be out there for the night, and so I was always a little bit nervous. So I went out one night, and I probably picked the most difficult night, I'd say, right? Didn't turn out to be, but in the sense of you collected me from the station, and we went into your house, and I think it was for your birthday party.
Yeah,
gathering, and it wasn't a massive party, but there was this thing when, for me, I don't think I told you at the time, when I walked into the kitchen with you, and I looked out at the window, and there was like maybe 10 people, we'll say 10 for argument's sake, and I just looked out at the walk between the door and those 10 people, and you know what I mean, like it was like a catwalk or something. I was freaked out, like, but I went out and everybody was like you then out there, you know, I mean, in the sense that everybody was just welcoming and look chilled out and trying to make you part of the the group. And I was sitting there, and I've talked about this on the podcast about like my sometimes I see my jacket as at least this protective shell, and I was sitting in it and I was like a bit freaked out, but then I slowly started to kind of, and it was brilliant. I loved the night. It was a great night. I went to bed. For me, it was very late for me, like, but even go for a walk the next morning. But it's that whole thing of being included in something when you are. You may not be having a particularly good time. Your confidence might be low. There's all sorts of things you could be. But it's the whole thing of including people in things that's important, like. And I should have said it to you before, but it was that thing. Like, I know I appreciated it at the time, but it was just an extension of what I was saying about the empathy. Is that you never got frustrated or annoyed when I said I'm definitely coming out this Friday, and then I didn't come out, and I never felt, under pressure to do it.
Yeah.
I like that. Like, I like being included in things, but I obviously like the understanding that sometimes I'm just not gonna be able to do it because I'm a bit freaked.
Yeah, it's hard to explain because I genuinely, it didn't bother me. I don't know why. Again, this is probably maybe should do some in research and find out what makes that happen.
Do you think it's just understanding though? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think you have to. It could be something else, but I don't think you have to go really like deep and on a level where I just think you were just like, well, he's just not doing well at the moment, and it's fine. Like,
yeah,
and that's
a good point.
It's good enough, isn't it? Like,
so I suppose searching for something more complicated is not necessarily the answer, I suppose.
Well, but this is it, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, if it's a case where, I mean, it's probably the most sensible answer, I suppose, really, when you think about it, because it didn't genuinely, it never bothered me, and it just, I suppose it made the time when you eventually came out and we talked shit about music and all that stuff, and made it way more fun,
exactly,
and way more comfortable for you, more importantly. Do you know what I mean?
I think when it happens though, that's the thing, like, you know it, like, it's great and how good it is, but so I want to talk to you a bit about jiu-jitsu, because like, this is what I've kind of mentioned you in connection with numerous times in the on the podcast. How did you get into jiu-jitsu?
I did kickboxing for a few years out in the Wolfpack, and loved it. You know, it's an amazing facility. It's great people. Leon's a great coach. Myself and Sean trained out there for a while, and it was the first kind of martial art I ever did. I never thought, I was young. It was all football, that type of stuff. But I kind of overcame. I was thinking about it for a while. This is kind of my introduction, I suppose, to martial arts in general, and I was kind of trying to get over the kind of worrying factor of it, because you go from playing football to go to do a sport where people attack each other. It comes with a certain amount of kind of, okay, how am I going to get over this or whatever. But I did a couple of years of that, then changed job, changed city, so it kind of like, so travel, it all became a bit weird, and I kind of got into the idea where I kind of just didn't want to get knocked around the head as much, because the dizzy spells every now and again. I was kind of like, what, I'm in my 20s now, what if I get, what's going to be like in 10, 20 years, I suppose. So just looked up, I suppose I found grappling, jiu-jitsu. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how I isolated Brazilian jiu-jitsu as the next martial art for me. But at the time I was in Dublin, I said, you know what, I'm going to try this school. Why not? It's around the corner from work. Different city, didn't know a single person, brand new martial art. I was like, right, you know what, I'll go in. And when I went up to it, it just couldn't have been more intimidating. It was underground. You're in this tiny little changing room. It was Brazilian owned and run, so it was quite old school. There's lots of it was white geese only in the evenings. You greet the professor in black belt first, and then you work your way down in the colour of belts, that type of thing. So everything was kind of really new to me, because I'd never done a traditional martial art before, and did the first class, fainted.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, I kind of sat. I was kind of like, oh my god! I just sat against the wall. I kind of blacked out for a bit. I sat against the wall, and the instructor came over and said, "Are you okay?" He was like, "Did you? He was like, did you have breakfast? Did you really just going through all the, just all the potential problems?" I was like, "No, just unfit." He goes, "Look, just take a break. You're fine." And went back the next day. Did the same. Like, this was just a warm up.
This is
just a warm up. And the warm up was quite intense. It's 15-20 minutes, of, and you're underground. You're in this heavy kind of, in the heavy kimono and the gi, like, it's and you're just 20, 30, 35 odd people down there with you, and it's about maybe a quarter the size of where I train now. So it was just a shock. But I went back the next day. and then the day after. And I think it was about the third or fourth, I said, you know what, this is for me.
Yeah.
Do you know, I can't, I don't know what it was. I suppose it's kind of it just kind of scratched that itch. You know, when you're young lads, you're young, that's why you play rugby, football, you know, just the kind of rough and tumble of it all.
Yeah.
But something to do with that, you know, something more that kind of tapped into that a little bit. And I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the calm, cool aspect of going up against someone far more skilled than you and just simply not standing a chance at all. You know, and 100 times out of 100 you were losing. That's it, simple as. And I just found that those odds quite, you know, they're quite good odds. So why not be in that position? Yeah. But as well as that, it just suited my temperament. Yeah. Do you know, I found that the heavy striking arts, you know, are, you know, whilst, you know, they are amazing, you know, and they all have their place. Of course they do. But for me personally, you know, you need to take a step back and go, well, there's no point in me doing something when there's something else out there that's better for me. I'm going to do that.
Of course, yeah.
Do you know, make the decision, go do it. Do you know, and whatever about the initial, that happens with everything. New job, new people, new team, whatever you're doing, new sport, whatever. Just, you know, it's easy for me to say, I suppose, at the time, because I've done it a couple of times now, but I'm delighted I did, because I've managed to turn a few people onto the sport. But it's just my temperament, the flow of the martial art itself, the culture of the martial art. It's a lovely pocket kind of to be in, and I'm you know, delighted I found it. Yeah,
I mean, you talked me into it, which was tough, because just to get into an actual, you know, a place was difficult enough. But we had talked about it quite a few times, and you'd showed me some chokes on your kitchen floor. Do you remember?
Tiles.
Yeah, tiles. Me and Sean were there, and Seamus was showing us some chokes and things like that. And you know, that probably should normally put someone off. But what I do like about it is it's what it should be anyway. It certainly is for me, and it is for you. Like the egoless aspect of it. You know, it's what you're saying about striking sports, hugely skillful as well. But of course, there's a little bit more of a macho edge to it, because it's striking. You know, you're kicking someone, you're punching someone. You feel like maybe you need that. I haven't done them, by the way. This is an amateur, not even an amateur speaking about them. But in jiu-jitsu, like you say, leave your ego at the door. You're going to be rolling against someone that's going to just beat you time after time after time, and you're going to have to try and figure out why and how you can do better against them. And it's a brilliant sport, and I've recommended it for mental health on here before. And talk about rolling 5 minutes to completely forget anxiety and everything else that's going on in your head, because it's almost like you're trying to survive, you know.
It's amazing for that, actually.
Yeah,
you know, I can't, if I after training, if I leave, I can't remember what I was thinking about when I you know, and I don't think, you know, I challenge anybody to remember, or I challenge anyone to remember exactly what they were thinking when they were running. Apart from, I don't want to die here, but do you know what I mean?
I want to survive this.
Yeah, exactly. You know, as quick as it may be, depending on the skill level you're up against. But no, it's the machoism you're talking about. It's, you know, that's true. Yeah. It's just more of a, just traditionally more of a manly sport. I suppose more of a macho sport. I suppose your boxing. You know, there's more bravado around it, I suppose.
Of course,
but the grappling arts, you know, I don't know. As I said before, I just kind of slotted in quite comfortably. Yeah. But again, there's the group. You know, the social aspect to it. You're with like-minded people for the most part. I mean, 90% of the time, you're always going to have whatever. But whatever, that's, you know, it's a given. Yeah. But all of a sudden, you have like-minded people. People are, you know, you realise they're chilled, they're approachable. You know, and you know, when you're in a position, the first thing when you join jiu-jitsu first, it's all about the whole personal space thing. How in the name of God am I going to get over this whole personal space thing? This person is on me.
On my chest.
Speaking into my left ear, whispering into my left ear. You know, this is what's happening. You know, your brain is just firing. But then after a class or two, it just you know, you're kind of right. That's, you know, it's just training. You know, everything is about, you know, just leaving everything outside. And learning sport and competing and having fun and just having a laugh. I mean, we roar and laugh, you know, sometimes in the mats, but look, it is what it is.
It's great. And speaking of somewhere where I can actually do that, I will now do an ad for one. See that for a link. Beautiful. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone. A place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre. Train like a warrior. So Shane, we're going to talk about something we haven't talked about in the podcast before, and that's gaming. So tell me where your love for gaming began.
I was about, I say I was about 3.
Mm.
Do you know, I don't know. You know, usually, I don't know why I remember, because my memory's not the best.
Yeah.
A bit loud there. My memory's not the best, you know, typically, you know, and I have kind of found ways to kind of make myself remember stuff, like walking around a notepad or whatever. But this, sometimes, like when it comes to game and music, like, you know, different experiences from recreational point of view, I suppose, and I just remember things, you know, specifically.
Yeah.
I was about 3. An uncle of mine came home from Lebanon and brought me back an Atari 2600, I think it was.
Right, yeah.
You know, and I just remember the joystick with the red button.
Yeah.
You know, and it was 100 games or whatever, I think. But the games were like Pong and Tank Battle. They're all the same. Tennis. Just one thing going across the screen. Pong. Or whatever. You know? And that was what it was. Then there's a few more years of can't remember anything. Just obviously just messing around with that. Yeah. But then I remember my dad bought me what did he get? He got me the Nintendo NES. Yeah. The very first one, and it came with Turtles. You know, the hardest game ever made.
I remember that.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. Because a few of them, because I was speaking to that, like as we all were as kids, people around our age, but I just remember playing. I turned it on, tried to play it. I even specifically remember to this day how unbelievably difficult it was. I'm pretty sure if I went back now, I would be able to clear it. Yeah. You know, it was absolutely ridiculous. And it's like if you look at it on YouTube, there's loads of videos going, this game should never have been made. It's way too hard. But I got to this, you know, this particular part in the middle where you have to swim up through loads of stuff without getting electrocuted. And I remember just turning off the computer and begging my dad to buy me Mario, and that was the end of that. But then there was other consoles the whole way up, like when I got Super Nintendo with Street Fighter, and then when I got I think I got PlayStation with Tekken and Resident Evil, and survival horror genre was kind of born around then. That's when games kind of started to get cinematic. And then that obviously added an extra dimension to it all.
They're hugely cinematic,
you know. Completely. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the likes of Red Dead Redemption, and if you look at the PS4, you've like games like
The Last of Us is
that's great. Like I don't have a PS4. I should have one, to be honest. But again, just having time or whatever. But if you look at worlds like The Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption, Mass Effect, Halo,
and my favorite, Drake's Fortune.
Uncharted. Yeah. Jesus, I remember getting it, and that was a PS3 at point. I suppose I got Uncharted 2 with that. That was amazing. But just every stage, I always, if there's a console there, I'll always have one. I'll always I just enjoy. Yeah, I just enjoy talking. There was a time when the Nintendo 64 came out. Was important because I was at the age where I was able to take my games and go to my friend's house, my joypads, and you were able to trade games, you know, swap them and kind of stay out till 12 o'clock at night, and you'd be playing GoldenEye or Mario Kart till whatever, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, just going back home then, you know, and that's kind of when it kicked into another gear where you can actually bring in the social aspect around it. Obviously at this point we've no internet, none of us. So it was all just local, you know, which I'm delighted I got to experience, because nowadays there's something a little less, not less enjoyable. It's, I suppose, just having the extra dimension of being able to play, you know, hopefully if there's a few games that have come out since that you can play like 2 to 4 player local co-op, which is like all in the bedroom together, but I mean, or out the bedroom together, obviously when we were kids, but say just anywhere.
Do you play those often, like where you talk to people and from other places or whatever?
No. I don't look. I don't want to get called names by some young lad.
By 12-year-old.
No. I'd like you're mad. No, thanks. No, you can keep all that. Yeah, but it's like I kind of got big into Street Fighter, I suppose, about 12 years ago when Street Fighter 4 came out, because I was a big Street Fighter gamer. You know, when I got Super Nintendo, I used to love it. I used to go play it in the arcade in town here. I used to beg my dad to bring me to that, and God help me, he used to bring me to it. But it's, I played that, you know, and that was, I used to always just disconnect the mic, you know, I don't, you know, if I'm playing, like I'll play with Sean and Paul Allen, all right, you know, and those, you know, they're very good friends of mine, and I enjoy you, and you have a chemistry, and you can chat and have the crack, you know, and just laugh your way through 3 or 4 hours, and just like the whole, going back to the whole jiu-jitsu thing, you find a space that you're comfortable with, you know, and then I have kind of some local games that I play with Shirley, etc. You have to have a blast there too, because obviously that's important to me as well. But games, I suppose, gaming as a whole is just, I just see it as another way to relax. I never judge it. Like, there's a lot of, obviously it's exploded in the last 5 or 6 years with the rise of YouTube personalities and Twitch streaming, which you'd see some people doing now and have an absolute mad crack with it, and that's great.
Blind Boy
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's doing a thing where he's just writing songs about stuff that he sees. Do you see the one about the buying a can of Fanta in his jobs? It's just
to explain. That's Red Dead. What Shane actually just mentioned, Red Dead Redemption, and Blind Boy just kind of doesn't really play the game so much. He just explores the landscape. That's what you mean about cinematic, though.
Yeah, he looks at them like a novel.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and he's writing these songs to go with them live on Twitch. I've seen a couple of them on YouTube, and they're actually very funny, And actually, Shane gave me the game The Last of Us, and I remember you giving it to me because of how cinematic it was, and because I'm into films, you thought that I'd appreciate it, and I actually finished it. It took me a while. I'm not great at finishing games. I'm not a huge gamer, but do you know what I loved actually? And I used to love playing games like Virtual Pool and games that you play on your own, almost like there's even on the computer you're on your own. You know what I mean? You're playing pool on your own on the screen. I never expanded beyond those into like The Last of Us and Uncharted until you gave me copies of them. Like, what do you think then? Why do you think people find them addictive then? Not saying you're addicted, of course. What
Me personally, I'm addicted.
No, yeah. What do you think? Why do you think people get addicted to gaming?
I think it's probably the escape aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think it's like people. If you see people reading a book, reading comics, you know, what are they doing? You know, why are they doing? Why are they watching movies? Why are they reading a book? Why are they, you know? I think in terms of art or media, I think games is the same thing. Yeah, but it has that interactive element to it, so you can do something about it.
Yeah.
In some games, obviously, you're on a rail. What I mean by that is there's a linear story that you have to follow, or a path that you have to follow. Some not so much. Some you decide, you know, through your own actions, and that makes it more compelling.
Yeah.
I suppose if you can imagine being able to change the outcome of a book or a movie, it may make it a bit more interesting. I suppose. It's also something that someone can get very good at if they don't find themselves particularly good at something else. You know, there was always a huge market of people who are kind of might be quite secluded. I don't know, or just might be much more introverted. Just saying, I'm cool, man. I don't need to, you know, go training 5, 6, 10 times a week when I'm 11 or 12 or whatever. The idea maybe I'd rather sit in my room and play with my friends, or go play Halo or whatever the case may be. Play Call of Duty, I suppose. With all these lads, my friends from America, and you know, there's a social aspect to it now as well. Course, you know, and then they start to develop, like, you know, it rolls into, you know, gaming personalities that might see on social media, and then that becomes a thing. You know, and then they might see it as a career choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, nowadays, I mean, it's changed when we were a kid, but I think the main reason why I got into it is simply because I found it really enjoyable, a way to kind of escape. And if it's like that for me, and I don't particularly have an addictive personality, then it could, you know, relatively get much worse for somebody else. Yeah. Or worse, as I suppose more intense might be a better word. Worse in some instances, of course, but intense in terms of people might, you know, there's a few games like the likes of, I got Halo when I was a kid, back in 2001, and that became intense, you know, because that was just, what is going on here, you know, because all of a sudden playing games like GoldenEye and Mario Kart, and all of a sudden you're playing this world, you know, and they're buying the books, you know, you know, you just get completely into it. So that, in that instance, that's great. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously it could bring people into other types of hobbies like reading, you know, incredibly healthy and necessary ones in a lot of cases. But the opportunity for that, I think, if you take a step back and look at the potential to go from a game out into all the different markets, I think is what would make it so compelling. Yeah, and
do you think it's like this unfortunate kind of narrative that goes along with gaming now? You hear it every time there's like a mass shooting in the States. Gaming and mental health seem to come into it immediately. You know, the fact that the guy had some, you know, maybe had some issues with depression or whatever, just for example. But he was a big gamer and he loved shoot up games, and it always seems to be those two things that are pushed to the front. Yeah. Whereas, you know, the violence in video games is same as the violence in films. You know, we've seen films that are some awful stuff happening, like, you know. Reservoir Dogs there behind me. But you know what I mean? Like, I think it's an unfortunate kind of aspect of rather than kind of dig a bit deeper, I think the easiest thing is to go, well, he was a gamer and he suffered from depression.
It's low-hanging fruit.
It is,
sure,
yeah,
and at the time, I don't think there was DSRB. I don't think we were there around at the time. So, I mean, like anything else, if you had your 4 or 5-year-old, 6-year-old watching Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, you know, every day, do you know what I mean, for weeks and weeks and weeks, you know, like, not to say, you know, it just brought a bit more structure into that, but I think that's just low-hanging fruit. It's not something it's not a narrative I'd really go along with, if I'm honest.
And I think another thing, like, you know, the effect that the negative effect it can have on your mental health, gaming and stuff like that, but it's always just the amount of it, and to keep an eye out for excessive game. And if you are a parent, I mean, obviously, and your teenager is excessively gaming, obviously it's something to keep an eye out for. But you know, anything that's overdone will always have a negative effect on your mental health.
Yeah,
you know, and you're saying like people with addictive personalities, for instance, are going to go down that route easy enough, you know. But it's just an interesting, gaming is an interesting topic, because to me it's I don't know a huge amount about it, you know, that kind of way. So I like to kind of figure out why people are into things that I'm not into, and you know, figure out why people aren't into other things that I am into, you know. I think it's an interesting kind of bit of psychology. Like, it's
also if it matches up with something you're interested in personally. Like if there was I mean, you probably thought about playing some of the UFC games. Do you know? No, I'd never played them actually myself, funnily enough. I'm not, you know, I don't watch too much UFC actually, but if it's a case where, you know, young kids grow up and they're interested in like the army or whatever, or guns or whatever the case may be, or it could be pool, it could be snooker, it could be football, FIFA, do you know? It just that, again, they come in fully loaded with an already, you know, profound interest in whatever they're going into, and it just makes it just shoots it up that extra level, and obviously the enjoyment of it as well. So that's something to think about. If you, I don't know, whatever, it's hard to make it relative, but jiu-jitsu is probably the best one. Even the match trying to make people get with that. Oh my god. But anyway, if one came out and it was really highly rated, you'd have to check it out. You would though, wouldn't you? And I think that's another point to back up what you asked me earlier on. You know, but again, having, you know, when you're in it since you're at such a young age, I think it just carries forward naturally, and you're just interested in newer technology, you know, how games are progressing, you know, the differences in everything, even peripherals, how is a controller evolving.
And you can see all that, like, you know, if you want to find out about that, you can go to YouTube and actually see how a game was made. There's always videos of something, there's videos of why they changed the controller. If you're really into something, you will find on YouTube, you'll find it on Vimeo, whatever site you use. So I do love that. I love when someone's really passionate about something. Like, so you should be passionate about things. It's important. So speaking about your other passion, because you mentioned it earlier on and it took over, like, who were the bands that really stood out for you early on?
Oh, jeez. When I was young, I didn't listen to music at all. God, I think I was about maybe around when I was young. My mum had a great taste in music. Now it's broad. You know, it goes from like Michael Jackson all the way as far as Westlife, you know. But when I was younger, I remember they had records, and they had Bad by Michael Jackson, and you know, you'd be flicking through and you'd see the Beatles were in there, but then all of a sudden you find like the Ghostbusters soundtrack, and that's what I wanted to listen to. I didn't get like Michael Jackson, who's he? Get rid of that. Ghostbusters. So when I was younger, there was that was always around. But then, bands wise, my uncle came over once, and you know, they had a party in the house or whatever. It was years ago, and he forgot his rock anthem CD, right? Big double disc. And I was like, "What's this?" So I put it on, and it started off. I think it was Queen, went into Aerosmith, went into Guns N' Roses, went into Whitesnake. They were the first 4 songs. And to someone who never listened to music, I was a bit. I was kind of like, "What am I listening to?" Just because it was "Walk This Way," "Sweet Child of Mine." Here I Go Again. It was all just charged kind of music, and I just really enjoyed it. It was incredibly new at the time, and after that, I just went. It was all about "Sweet Child of Mine," though. It kind of narrowed down to that, because I couldn't. The initial riff, I'd never really heard it like before. It almost sounded like a circus chime.
Yeah, very strange.
Or funfair chime. I was like, "What is this?" And then obviously the catchy singing and chorus, whatever, kind of just, and then the great solo at the end of it. But I just listened to that. I used to, because I know, you know, there was no iPods, there was none of this at the time. So I used to sit in the sitting room listening to this song over and over again with a pair of headphones on a hi-fi system, like for an hour a day. You know, just a teenager with no real, you know, 12, 13, kind of going, "Oh, I don't want to, I'm just going to sit here for a couple of hours listening to this." But then I saved up at the time, and I remember just going down and buying Appetite for Destruction. I just kind of didn't know what I was buying. I kind of bit the bullet, bought it, played it. I think I listened to Sweet Child of Mine's first song. I listened on it, and then I kind of went through played the first 10 seconds of every song on it. Yeah. I didn't like most of them. I think I liked Paradise City, and I was like, oh, do you know? And I don't know why. I don't know why. Yeah. Do you know? It's just being honest. I can't, you know. And as the weeks went on, I just used to leave it playing. You know, I'd be doing my homework, whatever. I just had this playing, and all of a sudden, after about maybe 2 or 3 months, I just absolutely fell in love with it, and it, you know, and it became the album I knew it should have been when I first heard it. But then again, you're at the point. It wasn't a rock era, do you know? Around the late 90s, 2000, it was just pop dominated. You know, it was boy bands and it was dance tunes. It was like, you know, it was no. If it was the 90s, the early 90s, late 80s, it would have been a different story. You know, it would have been familiar what I heard, but it was so different. Yeah, that it just took me. You know, I was disappointed. I remember being like, what? None of this sounds like Sweet Child of Mine. Yeah. And I'm trying to be as honest as I can. You know, I was expected for the same hit or whatever. But then, as I suppose, as your ears start to attune to what you're hearing or getting used to the type of genre of music you're listening to, you know, and you start to learn a guitar and what it is and how it behaves in a mix, you know, like then you start listening to Night Train, you know, and you start listening to the likes of like Rocket Queen and Mr. Brownstone, and you're just like, oh, just the raunchiness of it all, especially that album.
Yeah. Sean mentioned that album as well when he was here, and I bought that album when I think I got it in 1991, so I was like 9 years of age. I got it on tape, got it on cassette. I spoke about my first CD being Nevermind, but I had tapes before that, and it was like Duff McKagan's solo album I even had on tape. Like, it wasn't great. Okay,
let's moving on.
Moving on. He played all the instruments. Moving on. But
he ain't no Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah, but it was one of those things where you have all the Guns N' Roses one, and all of a sudden your favorite member. I love Duff in Guns N' Roses, so I bought the solo album. But yeah, like it was such Appetite for Destruction was such an impactful album for anybody who listened to guitar music. You know, guitar-based music. It was such a huge album, and I'll be honest, Guns N' Roses kind of went out for me when Nirvana came in, but they kind of came back after that. You know what I mean? You have a little bit of a phase, and Nirvana came out, and I was like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. And then I went back, and I was listening back to even Use Your Illusion 2, and I was kind of like, oh no, that is great, to be fair. Like, but you got to see them live, didn't you?
Yeah, I seen them. I didn't go see them when they came back about 11, 12 years ago, but actually, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, you like Slash. You like the band.
Yeah, my natural affinity was I was drawn to Slash originally, and he wasn't there, so I kind of
yeah.
Do you know? So but when Velvet Revolver came over, do you know, and when Slash was coming to play, I used to go see them, and they were amazing. Yeah. You know, and I got to see Scott Weiland before he passed.
And Chris Cornell.
Yeah, geez, a couple of times actually. Yeah. God, that hit hard actually.
Yeah, I remember talking to you about that actually.
Yeah, I see. Myself and Shirley, we kind of it's just we seen him a couple of times, and we got to see him. We got to see an acoustic gig up in Union Hall. I think it's Union Hall.
Yeah,
is it up in Belfast?
Yeah.
And it's a hauntingly brilliant gig. Just like someone I've listened to since I was a kid. Yeah. All of a sudden, it's just there with an acoustic on stage, just playing songs. You know, it's just and his voice is just I don't know. It was like it's kind of like a church atmosphere in there almost. Anyway, that was amazing. But you know, I was in Newcastle at the time with work, and I remember reading it, and Jesus, I was kind of I don't even think I could focus the rest of it. I don't even remember what that day was about, even in work. Yeah. If I'm honest, I have no idea. When I got back that day, I flew back in that evening, and I was kind of like, oh God, you know, sitting on the bus the whole way home, and it did it. You know, it hurt a bit, because it's you know, you don't realize how ingrained in. You know, it's whatever, but growing up listening to someone's music, but then you kind of go back over the experiences that you've gone through, whatever. Yeah. And obviously, growing up as a kid, you know, things happen, and you always revert back to music, movies, whatever, gaming, whatever. You know, and you kind of form a subconscious bond. But then when you start playing all their songs, and you start learning all their music, and you get more of appreciation for it. But it just all just kind of came to an apex, and then it's just. You know, I only realised when Apex after he passed, I was like, oh God. Do you know, and it did hurt a little bit actually, yeah. But Soundgarden definitely would have been one of those big ones.
Yeah, Pearl Jam is another one for you.
Yeah, I remember actually, Pearl Jam probably even more so, if I'm honest. I remember a cousin of mine, Andrew, he said, when I was younger and I was getting into that first Christmas of owning an Appetite for Destruction, I asked my dad for a guitar. And the parents bought me it. And, you know, it was like, I remember my mum, she, fair play to her, kind of went around before this. She kind of see me, listening to it. She kind of, fair play to her, she kind of went around her family and found me a guitar. And it was like a steel strung nylon acoustic. It's crane ropes. Yeah. It was strung with, like, it was just insane. I could have climbed through the gap between the fretboard and the strings. But it's and it absolutely gave me. But it was a great place to start because I remember just sitting in the room, learning tab, and trying to play the start and knocking on heaven's door, or just learning chords. And if I'm honest, I don't really remember the initial few months of learning. I just remember it being hard and taking a lot of time because I didn't get lessons, and I struggled with it a lot. But then I used to kind of a couple of my cousins, like Stephen Westcart and my cousin Andrew Rafferty, they played and they were younger and they were older than me, so I kind of went to them for and they were like, buy Pearl Jam 10, buy it, don't even ask me any more questions about it, buy it. So I went to buy it. Absolutely, that album is just a classic.
It is,
and to be honest, even as the years went on, I started listening to the album Versus more. I think Versus has...
I prefer it, actually.
I think Versus has this amazing energy in it. Pearl Jam in general had that, in terms of the grunge era, I think they had this electricity about them that I don't think... Well, I was never a big Nirvana fan, if I'm honest. So I'm going to withhold... I have no experience of even watching Nirvana or listening to them too much. But from what I've seen of the grunge era, they were just electric. They were on fire every time I used to see them. And I went to see them when they came back a couple of times here, and that was a huge experience for me as well. Seeing Mick McCready 10 feet from me playing the live solo, it's just
it's pretty.
It's
when it's one of your favorite bands. That's what I was going to ask you actually about the live experience in general, because it's like talking about the whole day, the build up and everything is normally too much for me, and I can't be. I find it quite difficult. But we've talked about kind of stuff like this before. But when you get into an arena with a band that you love, like there's very little you can compare it to. It's like you said, like a church experience, but it is almost like something kind of sacred about it. I've seen Radiohead 3 times, and they're one of my favorite bands. And every time I've seen them, I've come out of it just kind of a bit struck by how beautiful and intense it all was. You know,
I get it, and you can relate it back to sport in a sense of soccer, when people go see their favorite team play in their own stadium for the first time. I think is a big deal for a lot of football fans, that they can relate to musicians when they go see their favourite bands in concert for the first time. I'm a Liverpool fan, quite a casual one now, I suppose, not as as aggressive, I suppose, as I was here. Well, not really aggressive, but as heavy into it as I was years ago. But I've been to Anfield. When you go to Anfield for the first time, you never walk alone. You're about to see Liverpool play. It's surreal. It's it's, I suppose, dare I say, almost religious. In terms of the build up to it, and the the seat in the arena. It's an amazing experience, regardless of whatever team you follow. But music's the same. You go see the band, as you said. You go to wherever it was. The Point was obviously, when we were younger, was the big place to go. And going to see, I remember going to see Slash for the first time, playing with Velvet Revolver. I think it was back 2004, 2005, I think, for the first album. And it was just for years, like listening to his music, studying it. I don't know how many thousands of hours you put into not only listening but learning. Reading about it, watching like the Live in Tokyo video VHS over and over again, and all of a sudden you're standing a few feet away from the stage, and he's about to walk out and play in front of you. If I can make it relative to anybody else, it's going to see your favorite wrestler or your favorite footballer or whatever
you could use
for the first time.
Exactly.
It's you mentioned sacred, and I think absolutely it's something I'll never forget. And it was an amazing experience.
Did you like playing live?
I did.
Did you?
I used to get nervous about it, actually. I did. I was always quite comfortable. I had a great band behind me. A friend of mine, Jez Breen, great guitar player. Me and him were playing since we never really attacked the guitar from a technical standpoint in terms of let's play the most complicated songs we could play. We played what we loved. And developed like a subconscious relationship musically over the years that we played together, and it was just, you wouldn't even need to look at each other. You just knew what the other one was going to do, and it's again, that's something that's quite tough to explain to somebody else.
Very tough.
It's you go back to your analogies and your comparisons. If you're playing GA, hurling, football, playing midfield with someone else for years, you just know how they work. If you're forward and he's an attacking midfielder, you know where the pass is going to come. You just know where he's going to be, etc. It's the same type of that kind of relationship. But that's the reason why I enjoy playing live, because I could count on the lads, you know, regardless of the bands that I was in, you know. Like if playing in bands with Sean Allen, I knew that he'd be a great singer. I could never have to worry about that. He would make me look good if I fucked up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, he's like one of those people that people will look at, you know, because he's a good front man. Like, and that's the thing. And did you find a bit of comfort? Because I certainly did when I played with Sean, in the fact that he was the front man and I could just chill out here a little bit in the back and
100%.
just do my thing, you know.
Yeah. I mean, naturally, my whole, I suppose, the personality side of it would, like, you know, some gigs now you might be fairly a bit looser than, for want of a better term, than you would be at other gigs, and that might be a bit of a difference. But you know, I'm perfectly comfortable with that, and I suppose that's the front man, lead singer. It's kind of what that evolved into over 60 years, I suppose, of rock music. Yeah,
I am actually gonna, because I'm gonna talk a bit about that on Sunday. They'll actually hear the Sunday bit before this. That makes any sense, but just about the confidence that front men have and things like that, you know, and how we can try and not walk around like Freddie Mercury, but certainly have a bit more like swagger and confidence in ourselves, you know, and how we get there, you know. But you did mention Liverpool. I had Kieran McNally on a few weeks back, and I think it's only right. He's a Liverpool fan. I think it's only right to ask you, after such a long time, how, and I know you're not a like me, a huge mad football fan anymore, because you kind of drift out, but how brilliant was it to see them winning the title?
It was, I suppose, it was not being able to, it was a few things. It's hard to explain because of what's happened, and the way in which it was won. Because there's two levels to it. Number one, you can't argue the fact that they're the best team of the season. That's sure, you know, that can't be argued. Of course they were, but it was there was an anticlimax to it, 100%. Yeah, I know. Do you know, in the sense that there wasn't, like, you know, the Anfield Road end and the Cop, and they all weren't there you know, just driving the team in them last few matches and being able to celebrate with it. So there was an anticlimax to it. It felt a bit surreal because I don't remember them winning the league. I don't remember them. It was 90 or whatever it was. Yeah. When I think it was Kenny Dalglish when he last won it. I think. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I don't remember that at all. Yeah. Do you know? Back then it was all Ireland games. Italia 90. Do you know? That was really the kind of highlights of it, and the qualifiers and all that stuff. But I was grateful to have seen it because I don't know how many times I'm going to see it again. And surreal, didn't know how to celebrate it really. You know, what do I do? I think a lot of fans, it's always unfortunate, like, because I think a lot of fans try to take it away from you a bit. It's like, the way I see it, right? So Liverpool hadn't won the title in 30 years, okay? They won the title, and I understand that there's an anticlimax because of what happened with the COVID stuff, and they didn't get to celebrate it on the pitch in Anfield and things like that. But they still won it. They won it well before the COVID-19. They didn't win it mathematically. I think they were 25 points ahead before that. Yeah, it's nothing to do with that. That is like, it's going down in the books as Liverpool won the league. But there's a bitterness, and like, this is minor compared to Liverpool in the league. But Arsenal won the cup the other day, and I watched the match. I haven't watched a lot of their matches this season, but I watched the final. Enjoyed it. They won it. Very strange, Wembley Stadium being empty. But like, there's already people like, like, it's only the FA Cup, like, but it's not really the point, though, is it? Like, the point is they won a trophy. How many teams won a trophy this year in England? Do you know what I mean? Like, Liverpool have 4 trophies, but like, it's only Liverpool, Arsenal, and did Manchester City won the other one? I can't remember, but you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to win a trophy, but it's the hardest to win the Premier League, and like, Liverpool can definitely attest to that. For the length of time they've had to go through watching United pick the trophy up, their rivals, we'll say. And they won the Premier League, and good for them, you know. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, about, you know, other people. Yeah, it doesn't interest me. You know, if it's growing up, it was always a thing. You know, there's that rivalry. Yeah, yeah. You know, and I was a Liverpool fan. I don't know why I became a Liverpool fan, if I'm honest. Yeah, I was going to ask you. Because Dad's an Everton fan. Oh, is he? Yeah. There's photos of me as a kid in the full Everton kit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. My dad's a Spurs fan. It's weird. Oh wow. Yeah. Okay. God, I have more questions for you then. But anyway, I don't. When I went to school, I think it was John. I actually was Ian Rush, I think. Oh right. And then Robbie Fowler afterwards. Steve McManaman. I think there was a good 4 years there, 5 years, where the players were just, I don't know, They were just great players.
Yeah,
and I remember actually watching one of Robbie Fowler's first games against Arsenal. We scored the hat trick in a few minutes. Hey, that sticks out in my head as well. Actually,
hey, look, we were in a restaurant in Malahide, right? Me mum and me.
Oh, so you don't remember this either, does it?
No, I remember it because
this is not etched in your brain at all.
We left the restaurant, and on the TV in the pub was 0-0. The drive home was 10 minutes. We got home, it was 3-0. I was like, God, come on. But yeah, we were rushing home to watch the match. Like, imagine. So naive. But yeah, I mean, I know we're not as mad about football, but it does just take a player. I remember the reason I support Arsenal is because Tony Adams. I just used to think he was unbelievable. Defender, he wasn't.
And he was.
Yeah, but just, when you see someone like just impressive on the football pitch, a kind of towering figure, and he was just one of those people for me. And sometimes that's all it takes, because people wonder, like, especially if most people think your dad supports the same team as you, that's why you support them. But yeah, when you find out, like, my brother support Villa and Blackburn, it's a kind of a weird spread of teams. But yeah, it's all a bit of crack, especially when you're young,
Yeah, and as well, used to go watch on Derby Day, like my dad. Sometimes we go and watch the matches or whatever, and it's always been about that. Even years ago, it's like, look, who cares? Let's go and watch it. If you win, we win, whatever, and move on with it. And you might have obviously other fans be like, oh, you're crap. What?
Constructive.
What? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that's good advice.
It's like,
or why it just didn't make sense to me. It's like if someone's in front of me just speaking absolute gibberish, it's it's the same thing. I just go, good talk, and just walk away. Do you know?
Before we finish up, actually, I just want to ask you. I thought of it the other day. About your fondness for a good whiskey.
Oh.
Where did that come from? Not in that way.
the amount
of whiskey you drink.
But let me see. I think when I was, I suppose, about 10 or 15 years ago, someone bought me a whiskey. I can't remember who bought it actually, or where I tried it actually. I tried a Redbreast whiskey. And my idea, when you're growing up, when you're young, you go to, you go drink whatever, it's all shots, but etc. You don't, the idea of actually appreciating a drink is it's just, you just haven't formed that idea yet, or that experience. But when I drank it, it's, simple things didn't burn, etc. Simple, very, very low bar here, right? It's flavor wise, it just didn't taste like the whiskey, like a Jack Daniels, I suppose, or burn like it. More to the point. But and I just enjoyed it, and then started kind of trying different ones. It just became a thing. So what's that like? What's this like? What's that like? Oh, that's terrible. Oh, what's this like? That's much better. Quite simple initially, but then the more I drank it, the more I started to find a favorite, and the more you find a favorite, the more you start to compare everything else to that favorite. And then you find a really good one. Then that's a good thing. You're like, oh my god, this is, after years, this is actually, could it be better? And then then you've like, then you try even more. Do you know what I mean? You've the opportunity that something could be as good as something you've loved for years. Like we were in America last November, and we were down in Savannah, Georgia. And
nice spot.
Yeah, amazing spot. And we were kind of traveling around down there, and we had we stopped into a place. I was never a big fan of, well, to be honest, when you hear bourbons over here, when you hear like Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, that type of thing, even if they are, I don't know. But again, I don't know too much about the American whiskey side of it. But we were sitting drinking in a barbecue place. He said some nice food was full, so recommend something for us. And he gave us some Jim Beam reserves, and they were amazing. Complete, like, just nothing like the horrible sweet syrupy crap that you'd get over here. Just amazing whiskies. But if I just, in terms of flavor and all, whatever kind of profiles, whatever they want to call them, if it's nice, I'll try it, and I'll get more of the same. Or if it's a type of, like, Scotch, I'm a big fan of Scotch actually. I mean, that's the whole turf versus smokeless wood chips, the Irish, so it's very, even like, if you like, a famous grouse whiskey is probably the aggressive example, but if you try that or even smell it, Jesus, it's bog,
right?
Do you know what I mean? It is plain turf. It is really, really, really tough. But no, whiskey, it came from just by chance trying a one that didn't burn, but it was smoother and developed into something. It's much the taste
better. And I like I mentioned before, when I came over to your house that night, and your friend Ken, I think it was, who gave it to you, but it was like a box, and the whiskey was inside and had a certificate in it.
Oh, that was a Middleton.
Yeah, it's very impressive looking.
Yeah, that's also delicious. It's gone now. Surprise!
It was a while ago, though.
Yeah, I suppose that would have been 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
but it's probably gone the same amount of time, to be honest. But that was actually delicious. But in fairness, though, I still, if I was to recommend anybody to try a whiskey, a good one for the first time, it would be a Redbreast. 12 year. There's the 12, a 15, and 21. And they get stronger as they go up, I think.
More expensive.
Yes, absolutely. But they'll go from about 40% and they'll climb from there. And obviously that comes with a bit more of an aggressive punch.
I've never been able to drink anything like anything above beer, I think, because I just found it, I don't know, a bit sickening or something. And I mean, if I'm talking about the whiskey I drank, it was like the stuff you get in a pub, you know what I mean? It's not like what you're talking about, the Redbreast, but I just found it hard to drink those kind of things. Obviously don't drink anymore anyway, so it doesn't matter. But have you got any questions?
What's that? Liar!
Yeah, who's got the pint glass beside you?
Exactly. Kind of Tennent's.
I used to love Tennent's.
They're selling it again, I think. It's in O'Brien's. Big yellow cans.
I used to big yellow cans. Nobody
God.
used to.
They're €1.
And I used to buy like a 12 pack and put them in the fridge because I knew the people I was living with weren't going to go near it because they hated it. Like, it was brilliant.
Harp.
Just a harp.
Jesus.
But any question for me or questions?
To be honest, I hadn't thought about it.
No, I know. I should have let.
I think. Don't worry about that. I think for me, based on where you were, say 10 years ago when we first met you.
Yeah.
How do you feel now having a podcast with thousands of people liking you and following you on social media? Do you feel like the journey between there? Do you think it's been worth it? I suppose.
Oh yeah, like I think it. Like right from the moment when I started going to therapy, we'll say, right, to talk about CBT and stuff, I didn't feel at that time like a proper human being as such. We'll say like a human being, but you know, like I wasn't part of society, right? So I started going down to Yee in X-Division, started to feel a bit more human. Started going into Easton's. The people in Easton's were lovely to me as well. Like even actually including Heather, Martin Hickey's fiance, really nice to me. You start to realize that people that you're part of it. Like now, what happens then is you make friends. You people kind of like I'm talking about you adding me into stuff, like invite me over and things like that. Oh, that all comes along. Then jiu-jitsu, I met a lot of people. So it's been worth it. It's been hard. Like it's been very hard. The first 5 years were awful, you know, but the next 5 were the ones where you start to kind of grow and you learn a lot about yourself. I think it's, do you know what I think is really important actually when you do struggle and things like that? I think it's so important to study up on what you're struggling with, you know, whether it's going online or whether it's going to buy some books that have to do with mental health. I'm not saying that they're the cure for everything because you do have to follow what they're telling you to do. Do you know what I mean? You can read something and say, okay, I'll do that and then not do it. But I do think that along the way, yeah, I've met some great people and they've been very kind to me and they've been very cool to listen to this podcast. It's you know, it's, I'm not going to say loads of work goes into it. It takes a little bit of work, but not a huge amount. John helps me a lot with the stuff that I wouldn't be able to do. You know, I write down, as you can see, Shane, I write down some questions just to kind of guide me along. But, you know, it wasn't tough to write your one, to be fair, because I know you. But the other ones are more difficult. But I wouldn't have been able to talk to people like this 10 years ago. No chance to sit here and talk to people about and feel confident enough to kind of ask people questions. Like, who am I to be asking people questions? Yeah, that's what would have been in my head.
Yeah, and that's probably the question I meant to ask. Instead of saying was it worth it? I
know
if someone told you that you would be at this point, have achieved what you've achieved.
Yeah, I wouldn't have.
Do you know? I mean, you're taught such was your mental state at the time. It would have been not a chance.
Yeah,
which kind of makes it all the more impressive.
I hope so. Yeah, there would be no chance. That's what I would have told you. Like, if you told me I was going to be doing a podcast and like having the confidence to put content out there, because you know what people are like, they can cut you down. Not the people who like my Facebook page and stuff, they're cool. Like, but there's always other people knocking around. My friend who cancelled me because I had a bit of a go at Donald Trump, like, you know. But I wasn't annoyed about him because I was kind of thinking, I think I'm on the right side of history with this one. I will be. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, but I mean,
it's not important.
It's kind of the separating the wheat, the chaff there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not important. I think that these feedback I'm getting off people and people are so willing. Like, you drove over today, you know, very honest about all the stuff that I asked you. As I mentioned in the last podcast as well, I can't believe that honestly the people are showing, like, they've never met me and they're talking about their mental health journey. It's you talk about 20 years ago, people wouldn't have done that. Like, couldn't be doing this, just talking about, I was really anxious and I took too many pills one day. Like, I talked about that in the first episode.
I remember
20 years ago. Yeah, like 20 years ago I wouldn't have mentioned it though. I wouldn't have even thought of it. So yeah, it's been great. Like, this is episode 28 we've recorded. I think it's pretty cool, like, you know.
Yeah, it's even. I think I was listening to was it last week, the week before? Was Sean was 20? Was 26?
Yeah.
Do you know? When you said 26, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Do you know? Because I've been listening all along, and you kind of you know, have, because of work, I'd listen in the car, or if I'm at home, I'll have you on the speaker, the Bluetooth speaker in the house as I'm walking around doing stuff. But yeah, no, it's an amazing achievement. I mean, something I couldn't do. Do you know? I don't know if I'd have but this is the thing. It's specific. It's great for the last however many years that your experiences have kind of sharpened you to a point where this is where you find yourself, both obviously outside of here in terms of what you're doing with sports and recreation and like socially, and then here hobby wise, you know, you're starting to drive this, which is, you know, it's no longer a hobby really. It's it's kind of started off as something you've always wanted to do and talk, and it's something you're incredibly good at and have an affinity for. You know, I've always found you incredibly smart, articulate, and this is a definite, you know, avenue for you to go down. But incredibly proud of what you've done.
Thank you very much.
I think, you know, as you said, 10 years ago, you said you wouldn't have done it, but it just, if you said that to me then, I still wouldn't have believed you. Of course, you can. I mean, there's examples all around you, but it's very difficult to tell someone in that mindset that you just have to kind of not say anything and just kind of listen. Yeah, listen. That's help, it. Like, and just help them along.
That's another thing that I didn't mention earlier on, was about when I was talking about the empathy and stuff, and it's someone actually listening to you, and you know that they're listening. Do you know, it's not like that whole thing of where you're chatting away to someone and they might have the phone out or something. It's a completely separate thing. It's like someone sitting there and listening to what you're trying to tell them. And like these conversations that I'm having are, nobody really gets the time to do them anymore. And the fact to sit down face to face with someone for an hour without any interruptions, you know, it's just quite a nice thing for me. I think it's more than, like you said, it's a hobby would be, it's more than a hobby now, because of what I like to put into it, and it keeps my mind busy. I do the Sunday segments now where, you know, like even talking to a camera, like, do you know what I mean? Like, that for me is like so out of my comfort zone. But I felt that it was just a bit of crack to kind of touch base with some people, and it's good, like, you know, and I'm enjoying it. And thank you very much for coming over today.
No problem.
He shrugs his shoulders. No, I do honestly appreciate it. But listen, I'm going to fly through these. Big thanks to John and his family, and to Megan, to Ger, my mum, my dad, and my grandfather, as usual. People who have kind of, maybe if this is new, why do I thank those people? Because the podcast wouldn't be made without them. YouTube channel, subscribe if you haven't already. We're on Facebook, The Wheatley Wheatley, Instagram, Wheatley_there, and Twitter, Wheatley the Weekly, or the other way around, something like that. Spotify, Apple, Anchor, etc. We're on Discord. If you want an invite to have a chat, send me or John a message on our Facebook page. Obviously, thanks to everyone for listening again. Like I said to Shane, there's episode 28. It's good. It's August. I think we started in February, so it's pretty mad. But like I said, Shane, it's been a pleasure.
As always. It's been too long. I mean, Jesus, man, it's been a while. It's literally been 5 or 6 months.
It's been a long time.
Since we've sat
of course, we did have we won't
minor inconvenience.
Yeah, we won't talk about it. But yeah, listen, thanks very much to everybody again, and we will talk to you next week. Take care. Bye bye.